Hi friends, it's Megan from Modern Moon Quilt Studio, and this week is the second week of the Sweater Weather Sampler, which means that we're making the Falling Leaves quilt block. Now this quilt block does use curves. I used 4 large orange peel units to symbolize falling leaves that are changing colors, falling to the ground. It's very clean and minimal and really fun to make. Now I know a lot of you are probably new to sewing curves or might be a little bit nervous about it, so in this video I'm going to go over my top 7 tips for piecing curves. Tip number 1 is to check the scale of your template. Anytime that you have a quilt pattern that requires that you print templates out on your home printer, you want to make sure that you're printing it to 100% scale. So each template should have a 1-inch square on here, and you want to confirm that it's the correct size by simply placing a ruler over top and making sure that square is 1 inch by 1 inch. Tip number 2, make sure you're cutting your template out on the dotted line. Use a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter to cut out your templates on the dotted line. Do not cut on the solid line. The solid line indicates where you'll be sewing and is your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Tip number 3 is to iron your fabric before you cut. Having fabric that is wrinkled or has deep creases in it is really going to make your cuts more inaccurate than they need to be. So giving your fabric a really good press before cutting is going to help with your accuracy in cutting and piecing. And I've been a real big fan lately of starching my fabrics before cutting, and I really love this quilting and crafting spray from Magic. It's fragrance free, and I just really love how it gives the fabric some starchiness and just some good structure to work with before you start cutting and piecing. Tip number 4 is to use a small acrylic ruler like this 6-inch square ruler that I'm using to cut out your curved template pieces. The reason I like to do this is I find that the ruler helps hold the paper template and the fabric nice and flat while you're cutting. And also you can use the 1/4 inch mark on your ruler to follow the solid line around while you cut. The reason I like this is you'll notice that while you're cutting, you're going to trim off little bits of the paper template as you go, especially if you have lots of pieces to cut. So naturally that template's going to get a little bit smaller as you go. But if you use the solid inner line with the 1/4 inch mark on your ruler, you're going to make sure that your template pieces are all the same throughout. And the same is true for cutting your concave pieces. This template B piece, you actually need 8 of these for the falling leaves block. So I like to cut this by doubling up my fabric, and it means I can cut 2 pieces at a time, and I still use a ruler to hold the paper and fabric in place. I just use a slightly larger ruler. I cut the straight edges first and then go through and cut the inner curve using a smaller ruler. The other tip I have for you in cutting the template B pieces is to make sure you're following the cutting diagram that I included on the template B sheet. This is going to help you use your fabric most efficiently and make sure you're not wasting any fabric. And you should be able to get all 8 pieces cut from one with the fabric strip. Tip number 5 is to make sure you're either pinning or glue basting your convex and concave pieces together. I'll show you a few methods, but regardless of the method that you choose, you're always going to start by marking the center of both the leaf unit or the convex unit and the outer background fabric, which is the concave piece. And you do that by folding each piece in half and then just giving it a quick finger press to mark the center. And now when you unfold, you can line up the centers of each unit and then flip them right sides together. So if you're using pins, what I like to do is start by pinning the very center, making sure those marks are lined up, and then pin each corner. Once you have each end pinned into place, then start working down into the center, and you have plenty of pins to make sure that everything is spaced nice and evenly, and it's going to make sewing so much easier. At this point, most of you are probably starting to panic because this looks like an absolute hot mess, and if it does, you're doing it right. Just go with it. Trust me, it's gonna all work out. Just make sure you're getting enough pins in there to get everything nice and secure, and just go with the flow. Another method you can try is glue basting. And when you do this, I start the same by folding and marking the center of each unit, placing them right sides together, and then I just use a good old-fashioned Elmer's school glue stick. I start at the center just like I did with pinning. I put a small amount of glue and then I set it with a hot iron. Once I have the center basted with a little bit of glue, then I go through and do the 2 ends. Just like I did with pinning, I set that with some heat, and then I just move through the curve, just making sure the fabric is spread nice and evenly so we're not having any folds or puckers. Okay, let's start sewing these curves. Tip number 6 is to go slowly while you're sewing and piecing. This is really important because going slow is going to allow you plenty of time to make small adjustments while you go. If you do have to lift the presser foot while you're sewing, just make sure you're leaving the needle in the down position. This is going to hold both layers of fabric nice and secure and make sure there's nothing shifting. Then lift the presser foot, make any small adjustments that you need, and then lower the presser foot and continue sewing. And then make sure that you are removing those pins as you go. Don't be sewing over any pins. I like to quilt dangerously, but I'm not a maniac. My last tip for you is to just have fun. The whole point of a sampler is just getting a chance to try different patterns and different blocks from different designers. It's a great opportunity to try some new skills, learn something new, or just refine some old skills. If curves is something that is really stressing you out, just go slowly and just realize they're not going to look perfect, and that's not the point. Just have fun, do your best, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. I'd be happy to answer any questions or offer as much help as I can. Thank you so much for being a part of this sweater weather sampler. It's week 2, we have 7 more weeks and 7 more blocks, and each one is super fun and unique, and you're gonna learn something new each time you make a new block. Enjoy, and happy fall.